Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's episode. I don't know how anybody would not be obsessed with this topic. I remember it was either 5 or 6 years I first heard about reincarnation. I think I've watched every single episode that you can find on YouTube, on the internet. I probably know every case that there is out there just because it's so interesting to me, especially when they can link evidence to what these young children or people are saying, or you have past life regression readers who can, tap into that. So basically that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into the reincarnation stories though, I really want to talk about what I think the reasoning for us being here and how I think that reincarnation process works. Okay, so I'm going to give my take. I'm going to talk about a couple people that, I've just kind of taken pieces from different people that are well known and kind of made my own little theory of what I believe and why I think we continue to have to come back. Okay, so let's just get straight into it. So, I want to start off by saying that energy can't die. It can only be transferred, right? This is a scientific fact. I'm pretty sure I've said it multiple times on my channel. So you have to remember these bodies, and we can look at them as avatars, like little skins that we pick in a video game. And you have to remember, we are all one. There is no separation. And that is part of the key to why I think we have to continue to come back. I think we come here to reach Christ consciousness, to spiritually evolve, and to realize that, right, that we are all one, that there is no separation. To be enlightened in this life is what I think we come to do. And we all have what I call the blueprint of our own life. So just like how you have a blueprint of a building that tells you every little thing that's going to be in there, little closets, this and this and this, I think we have the same thing that goes for our life. So I believe that we have both free will and destiny in this life. And how I think that works is because, you have certain moments in this life that will happen, right? Like somebody saving you on a random day at 2:00 p.m. And I call those things contracts. Or, you'll meet somebody randomly and it'll be the most weirdest thing, like let's say a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And you can't explain how you both were in the same place at the same time, right? You hear people's I booked a flight to Canada just randomly one day and I ended up meeting the love of my life or something like that, right? I think that those are contracts. Those are already built in, right? The parents we pick, our sisters, our brothers, those types of relationships are predestined, right? We've already chose that before we came here. And I think the reason for choosing that is because in your previous life, there was something you didn't get right? So Earth is all about lessons. It is a school of lessons. And that's really all it is, to come here to evolve. And so let's say, in your past life, you were your mom's sister, and let's say you guys hated each other by the time you both passed away, and you never forgave each other for things. And in this new life, your sister becomes your mom or whatever. The dynamic usually always changes because you have to remember it's a soul getting put into a new body to learn the same lesson. So even if it is the same people, like let's say it is your mom, that's your mom in this life, I think we have to get those relationships right. It's about forgiving and it's about coming from a place of love. And when we come from a place of ego, right? Ego is that separation. That's where we start to think, why did this happen to me? And I went through that phase in my own life where I was completely dismissing my parents because, I was so angry at things that happened in my childhood that, I didn't understand. And it wasn't until I first heard about reincarnation that truly changed how I think about just them and everything. And, I realized that we choose this life that we come into. And, you have a lot of people that are like, I would never choose to choose my parents like a drug addict mom or this. I would never choose to not have an arm in this life. And I would never choose these things. And to speak on those things, it's hard to think when you're here in this realm that you would choose those things. But when you go back to consciousness, all knowing, what I think is who we are at our core, that continues after death, right? God, whatever you want to call it. You don't think like that. There is no ego when you go back to that. And there is no I, right? And I think I've told this story on one of my episodes before, but think of it as this is all say it's like levels to a video game. And I go back up there. We're both up there in consciousness. I don't think it's body, and I think it's much weirder than what we think. I think it's just knowing. Like, you just talk to each other like telepathically, and it's just that kind of thing where you just know what the other person's saying. And let's say I'm talking about how I have to come back because I didn't know how to love myself, right? And you have to come back because you didn't know how to love other people, and you were so just egocentric and only worried about me and you never thought about anybody else. So we came up with this contract together, and we were like, you're gonna cheat on me, and you're gonna literally just break my heart over and over and over. And it is up to me to leave you, to love myself enough to choose me over you in that situation. And then after that, you learn a very valuable lesson. It changes your life forever, right? You treat women differently after this. You do things differently. And that's how I think it kind of works, if that made a little bit of sense. So you have to remember, what I think is that we don't think from ego perspective before making those decisions, before coming here. And the thing is, in this life, we do have things that is karma. There's good karma and there's bad karma. And that goes into your next life. That is why it's so important to think about the things that you do and know, let's say you do something bad today. It doesn't always mean that next week, you will have to pay for those things. But it is important to think about maybe having to pay for it in your next life. And Dolores Cannon, she talks about how, and this is subjective, and I'm not trying to trigger anybody by this, but she does talk about how people that come into this life with disabilities, it is a way for them to pay off karma faster. So if they choose to come into this life with maybe a missing arm or just a disability at birth, it is a way for them to maybe pay off karma faster. And I actually have an interesting story we're going to talk about later, from Ian Stevenson with a little boy who, it ties into that a little bit, and it's super interesting. But yeah, I think that we also have free will though. So in between those things, right? Let's say you do have parents that you don't get along with and they were so bad to you as a child. It's up to you, right? The transmutation of life. You get to choose how you treat every single situation. You can either choose to forgive your parents and to come from a place of love and understand what it was teaching you both. Or you can choose to take that egotistical route. Like, no, I'm never going to talk to them. I deserve this. But you have to remember that is not what we came here to do, right? Learn to forgive, learn to love, learn to understand the lesson that not just you are learning, but the other person, right? We are all on our own individual journeys. It isn't just about us in this life. Sometimes it's about the bigger picture. How are you helping the whole consciousness? You got to remember, we're all connected. So every little thing that happens here is affecting something over here, right? The butterfly effect. And yeah, that's really how I think reincarnation works. It simply works by you not following your own blueprint and what you say you're going to do. So if you have a contract with the universe that says, I'm going to be a public speaker in this life, and I'm going to use my experiences, what I went through in childhood, to teach and to help people get through those that are going through the same thing. And if you choose to go be, I'll use me for instance. I was a GM at Taco Bell, making good money. I was, not that I wanted to do that. I was working 50, 60 hours a week, barely getting to see my daughter. But I made the conscious decision that that's not what I was called here to do, right? That's not what the universe wants me to do. So I decided to just quit my job. And, I wasn't sure how I'm going to pay this. It's so scary, and you have those fearful thoughts that will come up. But fear is literally the lowest vibration that you can, be experiencing and to have. And so I just had faith, and I was just like, I know that I'm meant to do this and to use my voice and to my experiences and just do what I'm doing now. And so I decided to quit my job. And, that is part of the blueprint that I'm talking about. You also have these contracts with the universe. So either you're going to be that musician that you want to be, or that artist. I think we're all here to use our artistic side, whatever that may be, creative side. And there's so many forms of that. And, I do think we have a need for medicine. I think it should be holistic though. And, you have to remember the people that run this world made the school systems and everything because they know about reincarnation, and they want us to continue to come back and to be addicted to this material world. So there's so many things that, go into having to come back. Yes, we come here to experience, and we should never get into that moments and those thoughts where we get too far in our spirituality, where we're like, oh, just forget all of everything. We do come here for a reason and a purpose, and it's about finding that balance. Okay, so not being addicted to the material world, but knowing that you can manifest and have anything that you want when you put your mind to it, right? Because your consciousness is creating your reality, and to go with the flow of life, because there will be so many things that just pop up randomly that you can't control. And those are the things that I think are the predestined part, right? The things that we have to, go through because it was part of a contract we had in this life. Okay, so Dolores Cannon speaks on this. She's super intelligent. I love listening to her if you want to just check her out. But also Ian Stevenson, okay? So he was a psychiatrist who studied this for 40 years, you guys. He was one of the very first people to get into this and to really take it seriously. He studied over 1,400 cases. And, listening to him is a bit hard because most of his interviews, he's like really old and talking so slow. And you're just like, hurry up. Especially if you have like ADHD or something. But anyways, his work is phenomenal, guys. So when he first got into this, he had people write to him, and he had about 44 cases. And he dismissed 25 of them. So that left about 25 left or something like that. So maybe it was like 50 cases to begin with. But so what happened was out of the 25 cases, 18 of them were under the age of 10. And then 8 of them were under the age of 3. And these were kids talking about having a past life and remembering who they were in their past life, how they died, and all of these things. So he actually wrote a paper, and he won like not a Nobel Prize. He won a prize for it. And 2 people had read his paper. So it was a lady, I forget her name, but she was like a psychic, and she was a very known psychic at this time. And you got to remember, this was during the 1950s, okay, when he first started this work. And it was another well-known guy who was super wealthy, and he offered to start paying Ian Stevenson. And he was like, no, I can't take your money because I'm just too busy doing so much right now that I wouldn't be able to, do what you want me to do. But he did take a little bit of money to get a recorder, and he saved up enough money to take a trip to India. And so he spent 4 weeks in India, and he had so many cases, right? I'm going to try to put pictures up of these things, but they would literally like sit under a tree, and they would just interview these people. And, he wanted to bring science into this, because you got to remember, he was a psychiatrist as well. And he wanted to really be able to bring facts with the stories. Okay. So one fascinating story that was really, really interesting to me, it was a boy in Sri Lanka, and his name was Gutratna or something like that. But anyway, so when he was about 2 to 3 years old, first off, he was born with the right side of his arm being smaller than the left side of his arm. And also the main muscle in his chest was missing. And they called this Poland syndrome back in the day. And so when he was 2 to 3 years old, his mom overheard him saying, my arm is like this because I killed my wife. And he just kept repeating it. And at this time, she was just like, I don't know what the story could be about. So she went to her husband, and she was like, telling him, our son is saying these things. And he was like, he's talking about my brother, which is so crazy to me. Okay, right? So Ian Stevenson, he's studying this, and he actually goes to them, and they fact check all of this, right? His brother really did kill, but it wasn't his wife at the time. It was actually his fiance. But in this country, whoever your fiance was or who you were with was basically your wife. And so he really did pass away, and he got shot in his chest. And I thought that story was so interesting, right? And what Ian Stevenson started to learn from his first trip in India, he learned that, people will have past lives and be a different gender. This is when he first learned about this. He learned that birthmarks, if you have a birthmark, it is quite likely, and it's in so many of his cases, that, this is how you passed away in your last life. And you'll still have that birthmark to this day. Another story was a story about a soldier in the USA. So in the United States, Dr. Stevenson documented a case involving a young boy who recalled a past life as a soldier. The child had vivid memories of his time in the military, including specific details about the battle he had fought in and the fatal gunshot wound he had sustained. The boy's memories were not only verified by military records, but also aligned with the birthmark on the child's body. That corresponded to the location of the fatal wound described by the child. This case was groundbreaking because it provided both verifiable memories of a real person and a physical marker, birthmarks, associated with the traumatic events of the past life. Dr. Stevenson meticulously investigation uncovered the identity of the soldier and corroborated the boy's memories with historical records and interviews with people who had known the soldier in his past life. In 2004, ABC News aired a profound reincarnation story about a 6-year-old boy named James Leininger, who at age 2 began to have what many people believe were spontaneous past life recalls. It all began innocently enough when he was only 18 months old, and the family visited a war museum. Gradually, the child's fascination with airplanes increased and developed into reoccurring traumatic nightmares of a burning plane crash. He would wake up screaming, airplane crash, plane on fire, little man can't get out. He drew detailed pictures of the flight that claimed his past life. He signed the drawings as James 3, stating he was the third James. As he began to develop speech, James started telling his parents about his former life as a firefighter pilot in the World War II Pacific campaign. James not only named the kind of plane he flew, but also the name of the carrier, Natoma. He named a pilot, Jack Larson, who had witnessed his death. All of these statements were verified as true facts. His parents later identified James M. Hudson Jr. as the name of the only pilot from the USS Natoma Bay who had died in the battle, James described. Since the pilot was a junior, it was surmised James Leininger considered himself to be James III. His parents managed to track down Jack Larson and confirmed he'd seen James Houston's plane hit and crash. They also contacted James' sister. So I remember watching this film, and they actually flew this little boy to where he believed he lived, and he was like walking around, because it's all on video, and he was like walking around pointing. He was like, that's where we used to land. You know, this is where I lived. And he was basically directing them. And I remember him like knowing the path to this lady's house, because they actually went to the person he claimed to be sister's house, who was still alive. And, you know, she was convinced that that was her brother reincarnated. And after this, his parents even published a book about James's story. What Ian Stevenson started to notice was that these people will have birthmarks, right? But they'll also have the same fears of the same way that they passed away, right? So it was this one story he talked about of a girl being scared of snakes. She was like literally terrified, and she would always talk about snakes. And she ended up like they researched it and found out that the person she claimed to be actually passed away from a cobra bite in her right arm. And so you'll have people be scared of fire, water, and they'll always have these dreams and things. And what usually happens is in the younger ages, the younger years, these people will remember, right? Because you're closer to source. You're closer to just being born. You don't have all these programs being pushed into your brain yet. Society, right? Life moves so fast and you just forget so much. And then usually by the age of 10 or the middle age of childhood, they start to forget these things. And also what happens is a lot of times parents will dismiss this stuff, right? They'll say, oh, it's just a kid with these fantasies and it's just a dream. And, you know, especially back in the day, they really weren't connecting this stuff. And, you know, they were like, it's just a fantasy. They're just children. So yeah, I thought that was important to know and to remember. This one is about a story of a boy who claimed to be a girl in his past life. In Thailand, Dr. Stevenson investigated a case involving a young girl who described her past life as a merchant. The girl recalled specific details about her life, including the market where she had sold goods, the location of her shop, and even the names of people she had known. Remarkably, the details of her past life were verified by locals who knew the merchant she had described. This case is particularly fascinating because it demonstrates how a child can recall not only specific details of a past life, but also knowledge of local customs, geography, and historical events. The girl's memories were corroborated with local records, and her family's history matched the details she had provided. This case further reinforced Dr. Stevenson's belief that some children's memories of past lives could not be explained away by coincidence or cultural influence. You know, those are just some of the stories I wanted to talk about, and I really wanted to make today's video just about, you know, what I think reincarnation is, why I think we have to come back, and then just to touch on a few reincarnation stories. And I highly recommend just taking a day or two to just get into all of them, because there's so many interesting stories. And back in the day, like in the late 90s, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure or the 80s, I'm pretty sure they had a segment where they would do reincarnation stories. And I don't know what happened to that kind of TV, but bring it back, right? We have so much nonsense that plays now, but yeah, after Ian Stevenson, there were so many people after him that continued his work and continued to look into this stuff. And, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you think you've been here before? Have you ever, experienced a dream? I would really love to hear from somebody that has vivid memories of a past life, or even if you've had like a past life regression reading done. And I would love to do that one day. I'm a little bit nervous and scared, but when these people get these past life readings done, because I think we all have gifts in this world, and I think some people really can tap into that. They put you under hypnosis almost, and get into your subconscious, that deep part that you don't really remember. But these people sometimes will start talking in a different language, right? So they'll be like, I'm a husband in this life, and it's a girl, and they'll be like, I have 3 kids, and they'll just start speaking like in Spanish, and they don't speak that at all. And when they wake up, they don't remember anything that they were talking about. But a lot of the times these people will feel everything all over again. They'll cry, they'll be having these purging moments, and I don't know, I find this stuff super interesting. And I find the whole just theory on us coming back and what are we here for, and really trying to seek and to understand what life is all about. I find all of those topics interesting. And yeah, I'm so curious to know what you guys think. If you think this is your first life, your last life, which I don't think any of us, I think it just continues. You just continue to have either a better life or a worse one. It's just all about lessons. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. Remember, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you like, subscribe, comment. I'm obsessed when you guys comment. And yeah, I hope y'all have the best week. Leave me some comments on something I should talk about next. I kind of want to do next month where I do an episode every single day. And I know it's going to be kind of so hard, especially because I'm going to be starting school back. But maybe just diving into different CIA experiments every single day and have 30 days of kind of, I don't know what the title would be. But so yeah, give me, interesting things to talk about, to look into. Make it super weird. Okay. I've been down so many rabbit holes. So it's not much that I feel like I haven't tapped on, but I know that there's tons out there that I also probably haven't. So yeah, I would love to hear from you guys and to hear what you want to hear next. Make sure that you're following me on TikTok if you're not already, Ashley Eckerly _, which I'm about headed up to here with TikTok. I have so many violations. My account is on the verge of just being taken away. When you start to speak the truth, and there's so much nonsense that gets pushed out on the internet, but they always take down the real truth. And yeah, I have so many violations on my account. Every single day, I feel like I'm getting a video taken down. But yeah, follow me over there. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching if you sticked around this long. And I will see you guys next week.